If we're not at a Disney park, we're dreaming about being there, and a cup of Joffrey's Coffee Disney Blend helps. But what about when you're at a Disney park? The Joffrey's Disney Kiosk and Restaurant Locator will make sure you never miss out. Whether it's a cool drink on a hot summer vacation or a great cup of coffee at a Disney signature restaurant, Joffrey's has you covered. Check it out at joffreys.com.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our final boarding call, and the doors will be closing soon.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm Tim Scott.
I'm Bob Collar.
This is ResortLoop.com. Bob, we have a very special show today. I'm going to let you just take it away. You had a special trip going on.
Yeah, so you already know, Tim, and most of the loopers that follow me on social media I was putting out hints as to where I was a couple of weeks ago when I was missing in action. I made an incredible trip, absolutely loved it, to Marceline, Missouri. Of course, Marceline being the boyhood home of Walt Disney. What an incredible experience. I've got so many things to talk about when it comes to Marceline, and we're going to do that on a later show. But one of the things that I found out about Marceline is they do a little thing called ToonFest every year.
Yeah.
ToonFest is a festival unlike no other. So we reached out to the folks at ToonFest, and they introduced us to the fellow we're going to have on today. He is a member of the National Cartoonist Society, as well as the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, and he is the Master of Ceremonies for ToonFest, Mr. Paul Fell. Paul, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. So why don't you tell people about yourself? Tell them, Looper Nation, all about Paul Fell.
Well, I'm a freelance cartoonist in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I've done a number of things in my life, as cartoonists have. I've been a high school art teacher and coach, and I was a college art professor. And for about 9 years, I was the editorial cartoonist and newsroom artist for the Lincoln Journal newspaper. And that job disappeared in 1992, and I'd always freelanced on the side. So I thought, well, maybe I'll give this freelance thing a go. And here, years and years later, I'm still at it. And I'm getting paid for doing the very thing I used to get in trouble at school for doing, which I still find that kind of remarkable after all this time, and my wife tolerates it.
Well, kind of like Walt Disney. I mean, Walt was getting in trouble he painted on the side of the barn in Marceline, so, nothing wrong with that.
Pretty much the same thing, it's cartoonists are just boys that never outgrew that cartooning phase, and it's kind of like guys that are into hot rods. They just never outgrew it, and it's just kind of part of their lives. And we joke a lot among ourselves because in my business you get to know everybody in the cartooning business, and one of the jokes we use is there are no retired cartoonists. There's just old cartoonists, because seriously, no one retires. It's kind of like if you take a farmer off the farm and put him in town, that's the fastest way to kill the old guy, because the farm is who he is. It's his life. And with cartooning, we go to the conventions and you see young cartoonists and middle-aged cartoonists and old cartoonists. And we're still all those boys that never outgrew that bad habit we had. Sure. So never take the pencil out of the cartoonist's hands, huh? Oh, no, never. I mean, your ideal scenario is that they find you slumped over your drawing board with your head stuck to the drawing where the ink dried after you kicked off. That'd be a pretty good way to go, I think.
Oh my goodness! So, how did tell us about ToonFest? What goes on at ToonFest? How did it all start? How did you get involved with ToonFest?
Well, first of all, ToonFest started 20 years ago. Actually, this will be the 20th anniversary of the ToonFest, and it kicked off with a big celebration in Marceline to recognize the 100th anniversary of Walt Disney's birth. And they made a big shindig out of it. They had people there from Disney World and Disneyland. Had a for Marceline a huge crowd, I guess. And it was so successful they decided they'd repeat it. And I think about the second year they had it, a cartoonist buddy of mine from Kansas City went, and he went and wrote an article about it in a magazine that's now no longer around called Cartoonist Profiles. And, you know, I read that article, and of course I'd known Bill for a long time, and I thought, gee, that sounds like a lot of fun. So my wife and I just decided to drive down to Marceline. It's about 3.5 hours, which, you know, for Midwesterners isn't much of a drive.
Right.
And we just had a terrific time. Met a lot of cartoonists who were there doing the same thing we did, and made a lot of friends among the ToonFest volunteers. And the next year they said, would you want to be one of the speakers? And so I came back and was a guest speaker, and then somehow they kind of sucked us in, and here we are, you know, years later, coming back every fall to see our friends and see, you know, what cartoonists will show up as just, you know, walk-ins. And the way the ToonFest operates is it's advertised to the general public as a Saturday event, but we actually kick it off on a Friday morning. We bring in usually four cartoonists as guest speakers. This year's guest speakers are Paul Trapp from Omaha, who does a comic strip called That a Baby, nationally syndicated comic strip. Cartoonist from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, named Ken Alvine. A woman cartoonist named Liza Donnelly, and she does not only editorial cartoons, but she also does a lot of gag cartoons for the New Yorker and does a lot of work for the TV networks, going out and covering events, you know, and sending in drawings as the events happen. And then last but not least, we have a guy who's a Missouri guy from down by Branson, Missouri, named Kent Melton. And Kent is a Disney sculptor. You know, the animators need three-dimensional models of the characters to get their drawings right. And those models are called maquettes. And Kent does those sculptures that, you know, the studios use for reference for their artists. He does incredible stuff. I just happened to come across his name by accident and thought, wow, this is an ideal person to have at the ToonFest. So we really have a variety of people, and those four speakers come in on Thursday night, and then on Friday morning we have what we call High School Day. And we invite art students and their teachers from all the area high schools. And we usually get somewhere between 300 and 400 students and teachers. And each cartoonist, each guest speaker gets up there and does about a 30-minute dog and pony show, you know, talking about their careers and showing samples of their work. And these kids are from largely rural communities, and to the best of my knowledge, this is the only event of its kind in the country where we bring in, you know, high school kids to see professional, well-known cartoonists. So that's what happens on Friday, and then on Saturday morning, we have the big ToonFest parade. And there's really nothing quite like that parade because it goes down Main Street, USA, and gets all the way down to the other end of town. and then they turn around and they come back.
Oh.
So if you miss something on the first go around, you get to see it on the second. All day long, they have arts and crafts booths in Ripley Park, which is right across the street from the ToonFest headquarters. And they also have all kinds of events for families all day long, including kids' activities that are all Disney related and live music. And then on Saturday afternoon, the cartoonists repeat their presentations for the general public. And finally, when that afternoon, they also have a silent auction of all kinds of interesting things, Disney related and otherwise, that people can bid on, and all the proceeds of that, of course, go to the ToonFest. And I might add that all of these ToonFest activities are free to the public.
Wow.
The only restriction we put on it is that high school day is only for the school groups.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful that you guys do that with them. Yeah.
Well, and then we have a lot of, the Walt Disney Museum is open, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a subsequent show. And we just have a lot of cartoonists, who just kind of show up because they've gotten the word. The interesting thing about the ToonFest is somehow I got the job of inviting the cartoonists. And at the beginning, it was kind of a challenge because, you had to tell them where Marceline was and what it was all about and how the ToonFest started. And, and some cartoonists were a little bit leery of, it's way out in the middle of nowhere. And, well, that was then and this is now. And now I have cartoonists coming up to me all the time and contacting me saying, how do I get on the list? I want to go to ToonFest. And it's because the people in Marceline just treat the visiting cartoonists like family. And I always tell everybody, I said, they will treat you like the prince that you envision yourself to be. And we all have this inflated vision of ourselves. The best story I could tell you about cartoonists' reaction to the ToonFest is one year we had Sam Viviano as a speaker, and Sam, up until he retired this year, was the art director for Mad magazine. We've actually had about 4 or 5 Mad cartoonists, and Sam is also a wonderful cartoonist in addition to being their art director. Well, he's a New York City boy, born and bred, and he told me toward the end of the ToonFest, he said, when I got to Marceline and looked around, he said, I thought to myself, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? But he said, you know what? I had the best time. So any more people, say, well, what can you tell me about the ToonFest? I said, well, why don't you talk to so-and-so and let them tell you, because they were there last year or the year before. And it's just a lot of fun. I got to tell you, people up front, this is not one of those big Comic-Con things where, you have thousands of people and you stand in line. And, this is a small town event and always will be. And that makes it, I think, doubly attractive because it's just really kind of a laid back weekend, and, everybody has a lot of fun and nobody takes anything very seriously. And people do have, FaceTime with the cartoonists because both at the end of the high school day session and at the end of the session for the general public, we kind of have an open question and answer session. And then we have a little time at the end where people can visit with the cartoonists and get an autograph drawing and maybe get some of their questions answered about, cartooning careers or just cartooning in general. And, we get new faces every year, and then we get a lot of familiar faces that keep coming back for more.
Yeah, I mean, where else can you go that you're going to be able to one, enjoy, the hometown boyhood home of Walt Disney, for one, and believe me, you're going to enjoy it. Any of our listeners will. And two, like you said, to have that interaction. If you're a budding cartoonist or artist, and you want to find out what does it take, how do I get there? Because I mean, it's probably gotten to be more and more difficult for cartoonists.
Yeah.
With newspapers are falling by the wayside, magazines are falling by the wayside, to keep going. But you guys do you keep doing it. It's a great opportunity for these kids to come and talk to you guys.
Yeah, it really is, and it's always fun to visit with people that are interested in what you're doing, and what's pretty neat about these kids that come to high school day is they're all from small towns, and they're all enthusiastic. They're not as some students, and believe me, I've been in education for a long time. Some students are really kind of jaded. They think they've seen it all, and it's like ho-hum. And these kids come in, and they get the day off from school on Friday, and so they're kind of hepped up about that, and then they have a lot of fun, and we even feed them lunch before they go back to their respective schools. Oh. And of course, they're excited anyway because it's Friday night, and that means Friday night football. And, so and it's fun. The kids come up and they ask pretty good questions, and the public Q&A session, we ask for written questions because I know no high school kid with any degree of self-respect would stand up in public and ask.
That's smart. That's smart thinking.
That ain't cool. So we ask for written questions, but then after the Q&A, the cartoonists all come down and sit on the front of the stage, and we've run off copies of their cartoons. So they give everybody that wants one an autographed copy, and the kids line up for those, and some of them are asking questions, and some are showing their work, and I literally have to tear these guys away. I say, "Hey, you've been here for 2 hours. It's time for lunch. Let's go." Oh, no. There's only about 20 more kids in my line. Wow. So it is just it's a gem, and I'm hoping that when the folks that founded this thing are ready to step back and let somebody else take over, that it will continue on. So
absolutely.
And a nice thing, a little sidebar on this. A number of years ago, and I don't know what the situation now is economically, but a number of years ago, when the economy was not doing as well as it is now, some of the schools called Kay Mallins, the ToonFest founder, because they have to bus them over from wherever their town is, and that might be 20 minutes, it might be an hour and a half. But some of the schools were calling and saying, "I don't think we're going to be able to come this year because the school doesn't have the funds to bus kids to this, that, and the other thing. They've got to kind of pick and choose where they're going to use the buses." Well, Kay Mallins went to some businesses and said, we're going to have some schools that aren't going to have a chance to be here because they can't afford to bus the kids over. And she got some businesses together to tell these schools, we'll pay the cost of bringing the kids over, just come. And I thought that was pretty remarkable.
That's incredible.
Because, and I'll tell you how small some of these schools are. They don't even have football. I mean, you've got schools that have 8-man football, 11-man football. There's some little tiny schools, at least in Nebraska, that have 8-man football. And a couple of these rural schools near Marceline are so tiny, they just have baseball and basketball.
Wow.
And being from Nebraska, I can't imagine a high school without a football team.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's kind of like Ohio,
Right.
Thing.
Right. Well, that speaks volumes, though. That story you told about the people of Marceline stepping up and bringing those kids to ToonFest, not allowing them to miss it. That just speaks. And I got to tell you something. when I was in Marceline, everybody, and I do mean everybody, just some of the nicest people you're ever going to meet on the face of the planet in Marceline. So having this there, it just has to be one of the most exciting things. Here's one of the reviews. I was looking for some reviews on what people thought about ToonFest. This was one of them. It says, ToonFest is one of Missouri's best kept secrets. The ability to attend free workshops and talk one-on-one with some of the world's best cartoonists, an especially fun-filled family day where your little princess or pirate can ride on a float in the ToonFest parade. And this was another one. It was a memorable day. I came from Orlando to see it. And one more says, always the highlight of my year. I love ToonFest in Marceline. So, I mean, you guys are doing such great work over there. And it just the pictures, I'm looking at these pictures. It looks just so much fun. The parades.
It is a blast.
Oh my gosh. So I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry, Paul.
If we got time, you mentioned the pirates and the princesses. And if you go to the, folks want to go to the ToonFest website, it's just simply toonfest.net, not com, toonfest.net. And it'll tell you all about the ToonFest. But they have, as you said, they have all these little girls dressed as Disney princesses riding on a float. Actually, they have so many of them, they have to have 2 floats. And they have a couple of grown-up princesses with them. And they teach them how to do the princess wave, like Queen Elizabeth does. and they have their tiaras and their little wands. And then for the boys and for girls that, want to do this, they have the Pirates of the Muddy Pearl. And they have all these little guys dressed up as pirates, and they ride on the pirate float, and they have a bunch of adult pirates walking alongside the float at the parade. And they have some special events for the pirates and the princesses. The princesses actually have a tea party, and they kind of break them into age groups. And no grandmothers or mothers are allowed at the princess tea party, only princesses. And it's quite a deal. It's a short little thing, and short enough for the kids, but you see them all traipsing around Marceline in their costumes. And all you talked about. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, all this ends up in Ripley Park, EP Ripley Park, which, of course, Walt Disney named one of the trains at Disneyland, the EP Ripley, because that was his park.
Well, and the other thing, if you've been to Disneyland and you stand on Main Street, USA, and then look at a photograph of Main Street, Marceline, you will see that Walt intentionally made Main Street, USA resemble downtown Marceline as he remembered it.
Yeah.
The other thing about Ripley Park that's kind of interesting is if you're an animation film fan, you know that the first animated cartoon with sound was called Steamboat Willie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, shortly after that, Walt released another animated film called The Band Concert. And, there's all these Disney animals, and they're in this gazebo, this bandstand in the park. And, of course, then confusion and mayhem reign supreme. But the bandstand is inspired by the bandstand that still is in Ripley Park. So that's kind of a fascinating thing, too. And, of course, it's a railroad town. So the train, as you know, the trains go through at 50 miles an hour about every 3 minutes.
Yes, they do.
And it's a major route from Chicago, and the actual Disney Museum is in the former Burlington Northern Railroad Depot, which is kind of neat. That's a cool building.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. They do incredible work there.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the world's best cartoonists that have been there. I'm just going to read you. I've got the list of ToonFest alumni in front of me. I'm just going to read you a number of names. the late Mort Walker that created Beetle Bailey, who's been there a couple of times. Bill Amon that does the strip Foxtrot. Pete Docter, who has a shelf full of Academy Awards for work he's done as an animator and director at Pixar.
Yeah.
Pete's been there twice. He just has a ball. Tom Wilson Jr. that does Ziggy. We've had a lot of Disney people, Disney Imagineers and Disney animators. Last year we had a married couple named Mike and Patty Peraza from California, and they are Disney master artists. They were in the first training group at Cal Arts when the Disney people said, we've got to train a whole new generation of Disney animators back in the early 70s. And just unbelievable work. We've had, I mentioned Guy Gilchrist. We've had editorial cartoonists, animators, magazine gag cartoonists, just everything. We've had, as I said, Sam Viviano. We've had from MAD. We've had Tom Richmond from MAD. We've had Paul Coker. I'm working on Sergio Aragonis now, the really MAD. You know, everybody loves Sergio, and he's probably the greatest MAD cartoonist. I keep saying, Sergio, I got 3 guys that already came, and you haven't come yet. Oh, I want to come. I want to come.
I'm a huge Mad Magazine fan. I've got a box just full of old Mad magazines from my childhood. So yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it is awesome. It is just a blast, and I'd recommend it highly for kids of all ages.
Absolutely. And they have a fantastic Facebook page. We're going to link everything to our posting of the show so that they can find you, Paul, and they can check out the ToonFest on Facebook and the website. And just if you have an opportunity, it's so well worth. I mean, I had to go probably 2 hours out of my way to stop in Marceline, but of course, being a Disney fan, it's a must-do. Mm-hmm. It was worth doing, and I cannot wait to get back to Marceline because it is such a wonderful town, and to experience ToonFest has got to be that's on my bucket list. I have to be at a ToonFest one of these days.
Oh, we'll save a place for you then. You know, once you've been there, they seem to, especially if you're related to the cartooning business, they never seem to forget who you are. So it's always like, you know, welcome home.
Oh, wow.
And I do look forward to it. You know, it's a lot of work putting that thing together, and I only do a small part. And most of what I do is fun stuff. But boy, there's an awful lot of behind-the-scenes work that goes into that, and it all seems to come together every year. And I don't want to jinx it, but every year we've had it, the weather gods have smiled on us, and it's always been a lovely day. And, you know, the third weekend of September in Marceline is right about the time when fall is kind of creeping in. So the days are still nice and warm, and it starts to get cool at night. And, you know, we've just never had to deal with weather issues. So let's hope that keeps up.
Absolutely. And this year, of course, celebrating the 20th year, it'll be on Saturday, September 15th this year. And like you said, you know, you guys are going to be there starting on Friday and going through the weekend. And so I recommend to everybody, please go to Marceline, period. But if you're going to go see Paul and all the other great cartoonists and during ToonFest on September 15th. So, Tim.
Yes.
That is all I have for Paul.
It just sounds amazing. The whole thing just sounds amazing. Paul, thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, it was a pleasure. It's great to talk with you guys, and I'll look forward to seeing you in Marceline.
Absolutely.
It's a date.
Absolutely.
Everybody, I'm Tim Scott. Facebook, Twitter, the website, ResortLoop.com.
Like us on Facebook, rate us on iTunes. Don't forget our YouTube channel as well. Watch us do silly things like cook. And what else should folks do, Tim?
It's still tasty, though. Everyone go out there and share the gateway to the magic.
See you, everybody.
Vacation memories will stay with you and your family for a lifetime. The Resort Loop Travel Group was created with this in mind. Our fee-free services will relieve you of the stress and confusion of finding and booking the best vacation at the best price. After booking, we will continue to monitor for ways to save you even more on your vacation. We will check for any upcoming packages and discounts to save you as many vacation dollars as possible. Resort Loop Travel Group, gateway to your magical vacation memories. Get a quote, or for more information, visit ResortLoopTravelGroup.com.
How'd you like your visit to Marceline?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. I'm a big fan of small towns. Marceline, I just absolutely love the fact there's not even a street light in Marceline.
Yeah,
That is
I
fantastic.
know it.